Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 41 of Feeling Through Live. I'm very, very honored and excited to be joined today by Taylor Miller and Juliet Romeo from Slamdance, who will introduce themselves in just a moment. But before we do that, I'm going to just do a quick image description of the screen. So you'll see in the top left corner, you'll see Feeling Through Live, episode 41. The title is Unstoppable Disability in Film. We'll be explaining what unstoppable is in just a moment. There's a interpreter box in the top right corner throughout. And my box says Doug Roland Feeling Through beneath it. And I have this kind of quirky electric keyboard thing behind me and a mirror over my over my left shoulder here. And I'll just say, since they can't see the screen, beneath Taylor, it says Taylor Miller Slamdance. Beneath Juliet Romeo, it says Juliet Romeo Slamdance. And Taylor, why don't you take away your image description?
Hey everybody, my name is Taylor Miller. I'm wearing a green sweater and a necklace with the little plane on it. I'm wearing clear glasses. I am a white woman with hair just below my shoulders. I have some books off to my left, and behind me is a whiteboard with some information regarding the panels for Slamdance.
And Juliet?
Hi everyone, my name is Juliet Romeo. I am a Afro-Caribbean brown-skinned woman. My hair is curly with 3 cornrow braids on the side. I'm wearing a oxygen cannula. I'm wearing a blouse that is black and red, and I think that's a little bit of pinkish blush, flowers all over it. And my backdrop is a white bookshelf with some film Tchaikovskys all over them and some awards.
Great. Well, and funny enough, I realized, because I describe myself every episode, I forgot to today, but I'm a white male, mid-30s, a little scruff on my face as per usual, short, dark hair. And again, the timing of today's episode couldn't be better, because Slamdance is just launched. It is one of the premier festivals in the United States. And what's been really cool about this year that Taylor and Juliet will tell you all about is not only have they been super prepared for this virtual festival and have an amazing offering of films for only $10, which you can get at slamdance.com, but there's also a new block of films this year called Unstoppable, which we'll be getting into as well. But before we get into that, Taylor, can you just maybe tell everyone a little bit, for people who aren't familiar with Slamdance, a little bit about just what the festival is and why it's so cool?
Yeah, for sure. First, I want to say thank you, Doug. This is an honor, and just a real privilege to be able to, talk with everyone today about filmmaking and visible and invisible disabilities for creators of all ages. And I want to thank Aaron and Jamie from Helen Keller Services for being our interpreters today. Yeah, Slamdance was started in the '90s, and it's a festival that, I think it was said, it's one of those festivals that has to really, it's raw and it's original and it's authentic, and it's, instead of it kind of being perceived as, well, it's, you got to think outside the box with this festival. It's like, no, forget the box. There's no box. Just don't, forget that. So Slamdance, was started in the '90s, right along, there was a group of filmmakers, and they submitted their films to Sundance. And those films were not accepted. And so this small group said, you know what, let's start our own festival from the films that were, rejected. And they started that, and that's been a long time ago. They started that up in Park City, and this year's it's a huge deal, because this is the biggest festival we've ever had, literally because of its accessibility. The amount of people that will be able to attend this festival right? It's incredible, and we can do it, safely from our own homes. It's on demand. It's on Apple TV. It's on Roku, and all of these all of these different platforms. I think what's incredible about Slamdance, though, is it's by filmmakers for filmmakers, and so we have some incredible alumni. We got the Russo brothers and Lena Dunham and Bong Joon-ho, and we just to name a few. But Slamdance is now sort of it's definitely left its mark as a festival that does things a little differently. And I think there's a rawness. There's a rawness to Slamdance and to Slamdance films that really have kind of, as a programmer, I've been a programmer for Slamdance for 10 years, and now I'm currently the festival manager for Slamdance Miami and the manager for the Unstoppable program. But a lot of the films, are first-time filmmakers, and that's awesome. That's awesome that we champion those type of filmmakers, and it's not all about big production value. It's about the story. It's about the heart of the story, and really being able to, what's the old adage? Give me the same thing, only different. So films that can do that and that have done that and will, that you'll see this year on slamdance.com, especially with the Unstoppable program. I mean, it's off the hook. This it's amazing.
And to pick up on something you were saying there, Taylor, about Slamdance thinking outside the box and also being a festival like for filmmakers by filmmakers, I think that's a perfect segue, Juliet, into you introducing specifically the Unstoppable block, which is new this year, and telling everyone what that is and why it's so cool.
Yeah, in the spirit of Slamdance and for filmmakers by filmmakers, the Unstoppable block is for differently abled filmmakers by differently abled filmmakers. Our programmers are all from the disabled community, and we came together and we chose 22 amazing films from disabled filmmakers and actors, and it was such a thrilling experience. And also, like what Taylor was saying about just the way Slamdance came about was pretty much the same way that Unstoppable. We saw a space that wasn't being available and having exposure, and we created a space for that. Accessibility in the disabled community is so important. And for me, as a filmmaker myself, trying to get to festivals, I love festivals, is like a chore. All worth it in the end, no matter what happens, but a chore in itself. And then I just got to thinking about how much of a struggle it is for me, and then how many other disabled filmmakers I don't ever get to see at festivals. And so if it's difficult for me and I actually can walk, what is it like for someone that can't see, or someone that, has a wheelchair or crutches? And so just being able to collaborate with Slamdance and have this event where it's like you brought the festival to us, it's just an amazing feeling.
Yeah, and again, I'd love to get into. There's a very interesting origin story behind how Unstoppable came to be, and I think it speaks to something that's been a very hot button topic in mainstream filmmaking over the last couple years, but something that also is very, I think, indicative of the spirit of Slamdance being a festival that, as a filmmaker that's currently in it, I can certainly attest to having a very collaborative spirit with the filmmakers that are a part of it or a part of the extended family. So Julia, can you go a little bit into like the specifics of the origin story of how Unstoppable came to be?
Yeah. A few years ago, I went to a festival and I was really excited. Actually, it was my first film festival. And everything that could happen as far as for someone that has accessible needs, happened. By the end of the festival, I was in the hospital, like admitted, missed my flight, there for 2 weeks. Um, my oxygen broke. I didn't have access to elevators sometimes, and the sweltering heat of New York City in the summer. It was everything. Yet it was still amazing. Like I'm literally in the hospital going, "This was epic. Will I do this again? Probably yes." But the struggle was always there, and for my second festival, it was local, but I realized this is just always going to be a struggle, and but I didn't see any other options out there for us or for people like me. And so I wrote a proposal, I wrote a letter, not really knowing what I was going to do with it. And then I had this opportunity in 2020 when a film coach that I am really good friends with, Joanne Butcher, she had um, like a virtual event where she would invite filmmakers and people in the industry to speak about whatever they were talking about. This time, it was Peter Baxter of Slamdance, and he was talking about the future of film festivals and where would they go from here, after the pandemic. And I was able to ask him a question that I think really struck him to the core, which was, what does your festival look like? Does it have disability, diversity, inclusion? And his answer was no, but he was not happy with that answer at all. And it was like from there, it was like you can tell he was thinking about it. And I was like, well, I wrote a proposal. I would love for you to take a look at it and see, if you like the ideas I've come up with. And that's pretty much all she wrote.
And to kind of talk about that, maybe Taylor, from the Slamdance side of things, again, Juliet speaks in that origin story of how through her own experience as a filmmaker at a festival, finding it really difficult from an accessibility standpoint, reaching out to getting connected with Slamdance and broaching that subject, and Slamdance being very receptive, and now having created the most accessible festival you have yet. What was that like on your side, as far as maybe conversations around accessibility prior to Juliet broaching that, and how things have evolved since that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a conversation in the making, for a while. But I think that when, the timing of the year that we've all had, last year, sort of, it was really important to take. Actually, I think originally, Juliet had sort of suggested something like a workshop, or, something like that, and then Peter Baxter had said, well, or just let's just do this. Let's go big or go home. Let's do a program. So I think the obvious thing, right, is that I know that Juliet and I, and you too, Doug, wish that this was something that had been done 10 years ago, and that it wasn't, that it's not something that we're just doing now. But I think what's more important is to focus on, it's not like why you're late to the table. It's, that we've gotten to the table at all, and that we will continue to do so for many years to come. And, I think that the collaboration aspect of this is key, because, through Juliet's letter and through, all of our programmers have visible and invisible disabilities. And so the accessibility factor, there were so many layers of it, but we were able to do something so different in thinking about the coming, the coming festival for this year, because the inability to have it in person. So automatically we were at a place that we hadn't really been before completely, where things had been offered online, but for the most part, right, everything was, it's a film festival, everything's in person. And so the switch to that, for people to be able to access all of this from home, there was something I think really incredible about how that affected our programmers, but also our filmmakers, because they weren't in a place where they were like, I can't, my film got in, I can't make it. I can't be there. Right. It was like, no, everybody can be, so I think, it wasn't accessibility in theory, it was in action. And, you know, it's virtual accessibility, but it's accessibility, the same.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember speaking one of the times I spoke with Peter, and his concern was, "Are you okay? We're gonna do everything virtually. What do you feel?" And I was like, "This is my home. Like, this is where I do everything. Virtually is like this is new to you guys, but it's not new to us. It's what we have been asking for: the ability to work from home, the ability to go to school from home, the ability to go to certain events from our space where everything is already accessible to us, as opposed to us going out into the outside world and having to adapt to everyone else. Like, you guys finally now have to come and adapt to our world, and how easy it really was for you to do that. So when I mentioned that to Peter, that was another like aha moment for him, that he just was like, wow, this is really great, because I never thought about the fact that you guys are used to this already. This is gonna be, a piece of cake for you guys.
And it's such an interesting topic, because when the pandemic first hit and we're all doing everything virtually, the predominating discussion was like, oh, how terrible is this? Like, it's so annoying. We can't be in person. We can't do this. We can't do that. But something that another narrative that has emerged, particularly in the disability community, is the ways in which, in a lot of facets, not all, of course, but in a lot of facets where it's created a real parity for people with disabilities in ways that they'd never experienced before. Juliet, like you're saying, like you were mentioning, people who would have even less of an ability to navigate a physical film festival than your experience, which it was still challenging, but people who might have even a harder time to get anywhere in a physical festival can now be everywhere virtually in a way that has never been available to them, and really be on the same plane as everyone else experiencing that festival. And I think it's it's such an interesting time, I feel like, to be leaning into accessibility, because there is something about the virtual landscape that is like a really interesting first step into really embracing accessibility in all the different ways, and instituting that across the whole platform of Slamdance. So, that makes me think, though, Taylor, question for you. Obviously we've just begun Slamdance today, so there's plenty going on right now to address.
2 hours and 20 minutes ago.
Right, about 20 minutes ago. So I'm going to talk about next year's Slamdance for a moment, even though we've just gotten into this one. But I'm just wondering, what, if any, discussions have started to emerge of when we're back in person, how we kind of, knowing that there's this commitment to accessibility and really embracing that and continuing to understand that and evolve that over time, what maybe early thoughts are there of how to implement that in a physical setting again, when we are able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I just wanted to say that, before I answer that, this question of accessibility, I think, as it pertains to our unstoppable filmmakers, is that the films themselves that are in this year's program, they show the different ways of accessibility in the way that it's been represented and misrepresented in film and advertisements through the story and through the content that they've built. And I think that that's just something to mention, because in each of these films, the filmmaker has taken their perspective and showed us that, in this program, we are able to access real, authentic stories. And what I mean by that is, I think we've talked a lot, Juliet and the programmers this year, and one of the really important pieces of this was to really look at tropes and look at characters and look at moments in the arc of storytelling where the disabled person comes in at this time, and either, and so I'm just going back to the question of accessibility, and, and and linking it to the program this year, because whether it's documentary or it's, a narrative short, it's also only this year, in our inaugural year, it's only short films. So one thing, to answer your question, Doug, in the future, we hope to, that's a question we're all going to, be having, but we hope to include, feature length films possibly. But in terms of, an in-person experience, I think that part of what's been so successful and genuine is that we've let our programmers build this, right? So turning to Juliet and to Asha Chai Chang and Gabriel Cordell, Chris Furby, and Steve Way, and saying, okay, let's say that next year everything is in person. What is the most important thing that we do on that level? Another person that's been amazing for us to talk with and really learn from is Jason Da Silva, and his vision and his leadership as it pertains to accessibility, adaptability, and authenticity is something that's really quite profound. So I'd love to give you a simple a simple answer of saying, okay, well, I envision that when you walk in, it would be like this and that. I think that it goes more broad than that, because I think that the collaborative aspect is something that's going to have to really be enforced for us to all really, come together with a vision for in person. Would you agree with that, Juliet? Or
Absolutely, but I do feel like it's important for the virtual space to still be present.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
For Unstoppable.
I think it's here to stay. I think virtual, yeah.
And that is such a cool, again, like, I think that's, obviously through the lens of accessibility, it's such a great thing to have as this, it feels like we've discovered something that's kind of always been staring us in the face, in a way, of this, like, wow, this is like actually not that hard to do. And it opens up so many doors, even when things are all well and good for us to congregate together again. Why not continue to do this and inherently continue to provide accessibility while we're also working through how to make the physical experience more accessible? And it's such an amazing byproduct of this. And Taylor, to kind of pick up on something you were just talking about, as we transition from the topic of accessibility to representation of people with disabilities in front of and behind the camera, and storytelling and narratives that really support the diverse understanding of these really diverse communities, and that doesn't pigeonhole them in kind of like historical tropes that really set these communities back. Something that's so cool about what you did with the Unstoppable program this year is that it was programmed entirely by a panel of jurors who are people with disabilities themselves. Juliet, I'd love, you being part of that panel of jurors, talking about the significance of that, because I don't know if I've ever heard of that before, but maybe if you could kind of share the importance of just the way in which the actual panel was constructed in the first place.
It was really important for me when we were pulling together the panel, and then when we finally met all the other programmers and we got together, I think it really hit us that this is important, that there's this space where we know we understand each other, even if we all have different tastes in films, different disabilities, different ideas about the world. The one thing that we understood is that struggle, a difficult space that we feel we always have to adapt to on the outside, right? And so when we started to look at the films, one thing we always agreed on was we need to know. If we love the film, one of the first things was, how authentic is this? Is this actor a real disabled person, or are they an actor acting as a disabled character. And so some films were just, we loved it and it broke our heart to find that out because we're like, okay, we can't do it, you know? But, you know, Taylor will tell you, she's like, you guys are cold hearted because we could be like, yes, we love this. But then we found out something that wasn't authentic and it's not to take away anything from the film, but it was like, this is what we want to represent to our audience. And that was really important to us, that the representation was true and authentic. Down to the very end, that was something that we really wanted to stick to. And so,
I mean, I said you were cold hearted as a joke because they wouldn't budge.
We wouldn't.
They wouldn't, you know, no. And then, not that I was telling them to budge, but you know, it was intense when, you know, especially, you know, in deliberations when we're discussing films, and that was really that was a really hard deliberations.
Yeah, they were hard.
There were so many fantastic films.
Well, and you know what, we've talked certainly plenty in this platform about authenticity and authentic casting, particularly when it comes to disability in film. And, you know, both, you know, Juliet and Taylor, you're just talking about having that really hard line of, hey, it might be a good film. It might even be a really good film, but it wasn't authentic, and therefore it doesn't fit in what we're trying to do here. For people who are maybe coming to this, who are still kind of understanding what authentic casting is, what authenticity in disability disability in film, what that really means. Can you talk, Juliet, a little bit more about why that's so important and why it was important to draw that hard line, even with films that maybe were good films, but didn't follow through in the authenticity in the way that you're describing?
It was important for me because I wanted other disabled filmmakers or creatives to see that disabled filmmakers and actors matter, but also to open the eyes of able-bodied filmmakers to see that these kind of actors exist. Like, you don't have to cast someone to pretend to be disabled when you have not even had someone in your casting, you know, audition that is disabled. And how specific, we even talked about when you are casting, you can't just put out a casting that says looking for a disabled person. Everyone will show up. What exactly are you looking for? Who exactly is that character, right? And so that was just really important that we represented properly, but then we also educated people that did not know or did not understand or did not know how or what steps to take, you know? So I feel like we did a good job at that. It was just, you know, I had these boxes that we had to check off before I could say, okay, this is okay.
I'm going to take a quick pause for an interpreter switch.
Okay.
All right, continuing here. So, and Juliet, I thank you for going a little bit more into that, because I think what's really important, and, you know, this is coming from someone who has certainly learned a lot about the process of authentic casting and authenticity in disability storytelling through the process of, you know, what's been a 3-year journey for me to make and exhibit Feeling Through. So I can certainly put a foot in both worlds of someone who not too long ago knew very little about this to now having it be a very important part of my day-to-day life, you know, for multiple years now. I think what people, you know, that you really caption what you're talking about that sometimes people don't understand is the fact that for so long there have been so few opportunities for people with disabilities in storytelling, both behind and in front of the camera. Because I know there's sometimes this argument of like, well, come on, it's acting. Like, the whole point is to take on another person's experience as your own and really just honor that from wherever, be an actor, right? And look, in a complete vacuum and in a complete like different world that is not the world that we live in and have lived in for many years, yeah, maybe in some alternate universe that has some validity to it. But the reality of the situation that we live in is that for many, many years, really the history of film as we know it and in many other parts of our society, there have been so few opportunities and given to people with disabilities in film, and so few structures that have supported people with disabilities telling their stories through film, that there needs to be right now this hard line drawn where it's like, because there's so many talented people with disabilities who've never had the opportunity and there's still so few stories relative to the pool of all stories being told that include people with disabilities, when people with disabilities make up as much as, perhaps depending on what numbers you look at, a quarter of our population in this country. Until we get to any sort of place where the people on both sides of the camera and the stories that we tell are reflective of the large percentage of people with disabilities that make up our society, there is a need to really focus on and create more opportunities that have not been there historically. And I think that's something that sometimes people who maybe argue on the other side are not really understanding that part of the conversation.
And that's what I wanted Slamdance to be able to translate for them. Because as much as we need to create this safe space for filmmakers, we also want to open up that space and invite everyone else. And this is not like, a disabled only club. We want to be able to interact and collaborate with all filmmakers, but just as Slamdance embraced this opportunity, we want to embrace the able community and have the able-bodied community embrace us and see even opportunities for them that they had never thought of. I've done panels before at other festivals where I'm telling filmmakers like the importance and different type of opportunities you have yourself when you open up the doors of opportunities for people that are disabled, for actors that are disabled, for cast and crew. There's so many other opportunities in funding and everywhere else, and you're blocking yourself off from that because you're not even thinking about how many layers your story can have just by doing this.
And, that makes me think of the fact that, particularly when you have a film festival that has so many films in it, right? Like, and a major film fest like Slamdance. Taylor, do you have that number off the top of your head of how many films are in this year's festival? Or I'm putting you on the spot, but it's a lot, right?
Yeah, no. It's a lot. I mean, so I think it's over 100, over 100, but thousands upon thousands of submissions.
Right. So you have thousands of submissions, like over 100 that make the festival. And I think one of the cool things that I love about film festivals is that you see so many stories in very short time, like succession, right? So you might be watching 3, 10 or more films in one day, like back to back to back. And when you watch, there's something different about watching a lot of films in short succession that you start to, there's a context that starts to emerge. That is not just the film you just saw, but how that film plays along
related to the other films, right?
Exactly. And that's what's
and
really
also the experience that the experience that you're having and the environment that you're surrounded by while you're having it.
Exactly.
All these details make up sort of that viewing experience and sort of what,
Exactly. And through the lens of, disability in film, I think for me, something that I've noticed, and Taylor, I have a question for you out of this, but I think something that's really interesting is that when you have this very unexplored territory in relation to a lot of other themes and types of films, of the disability in film and storytelling that includes storylines and characters with disabilities being a really unexplored territory that's fortunately starting to emerge more, but still few and far in between relative to, filmmaking as a whole. When you see a lot of stories in short succession, you're probably going to your interest is probably really going to be piqued by the type of story that you haven't seen before and maybe aren't going to see after, which in this case is a lot of stories that include themes and characters with disabilities. Because I think one of the things that a lot of people enjoy about seeing films and a lot of films in succession is that thing that grabs them, that's different, that they haven't seen before. And I'm wondering, please.
No. I'm just going to say that it's sort of right. Like I was saying at the beginning, that this concept of, give me the same thing, only different, except, I shared 2 films with, a best friend of mine last night and her husband, and they, they didn't really know, much about, they're not filmmakers, but they didn't know much about the Unstoppable program, or, I told them it was launching today. And when they called me after they'd viewed both of the films that are in the Unstoppable program, they said, I've never seen something like that. Or if I have, I've never seen it done in such a way that's made me reconsider the way that I'm thinking about the things that I'm experiencing. Mm-hmm. Right. So on one hand, I think that, one thing that was really important for the programmers and the whole team, right, is let's show reality. Let's show what is going on here and how people are represented and misrepresented, and let's show that. Let's also have, and this is something that's very important for Juliet, let's also make sure that there are films in this festival where it's a story, and the story has a disabled person in it, or the director is disabled, but it's not the main.
It's not about the disability.
It's not about the disability. So, right. So this is what's it's such a fine line, right? Because I think one of the intentions here this year and for every year that comes is to make it about, to bring that to the front. And yet it's got to be done in such a way that, it's not about disabled filmmakers. It's about filmmakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
I love that.
I would say something like, what was it that I always said? It's about giving these filmmakers possibility in spite of their disability. Opening up the doors to those possibilities, but not because of a disability.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, again, it feels like you've really done that in the right way with Slamdance, because Taylor, like you said, it really is, there is a real tightrope to walk on that, particularly when you're in the context of the current context we're in. If we were maybe, hopefully, as we move forward in years and this becomes something that is, all types of stories are embraced and shown with such regularity that it's the conversation has really evolved and storytelling has really evolved. But where we're at right now, there's this fine line between highlighting it but not making it about that. And that is something that both of those things are necessary, and it's a tough thing to do. But I think what I love so much about, getting to be a part of, Slamdance with Feeling Through and getting to communicate with, both of you and the jurors that make up this section is you've made it A, so collaborative, and B, by having it be, again, selected by a panel of jurors with disabilities and having them lead the conversation in a lot of ways, I think kind of inherently it's enabled you to talk about both sides of that in the way that both need to be talked about, to not make it too much about one side of that or the other.
Yeah. I mean, it's always, I don't think we had, one meeting where we weren't on the fence about something or walking the line of something, where it's like, well, if you look, anytime you, binary is interesting, right? Because anytime, it's either or, you're attempting to exclude. Yeah. Right. So it's like, from the very beginning, you're you're just trying to create, you know, an atmosphere of balance where, you know, I've always been, you know, as a documentarian, I've always been drawn to stories that are not being told, right? What's interesting now with sort of the amount of content that is online and you know, in social media and everything, there's kind of an oversaturation, right? But it's sort of like, you know, you've got films that aren't being told, or if they are being told, do they have the platform where they are reaching the audience that should be reached to really have an impact to make change if that's what's necessary, right? And so with this program, you know, it's like one film at a time here. We're just trying to change the narrative, you know. I think
Yeah, and I think we're really off to a good start. Um, I remember, you know, in the beginning, we really wanted. I was really adamant about. I didn't want to feel like anyone with any kind of disability was excluded. How can people that are blind um, be a part of this? How can people that are, you know, can't hear be a part of this? I wanted everyone to be able to enjoy films. I was speaking to someone and they were telling me about um, Dr. Dre and how, well, the DJ, not the other Dr. Dre, but how he, you know, he has recently gone blind, and he's a huge cinephile, and so he loves films, and he's trying to figure out how can I still be able to watch films. And that made me, you know, say like we need to be able to describe ourselves. Like I feel like we're leaving. I don't want to leave anyone behind and feel left out. I know what it was like to be at a film festival and feel included as a filmmaker or as a woman of color, but then still feel like I'm invisible because of my disability, because there's a space that I still can't quite fit into. And so I felt like, you know,
yeah, and yeah, yeah,
yeah, I was really nervous that are we leaving anyone out? Like, are we doing anything that
right.
left someone out? And so
Yeah,
I want to really try to make that even across the board. And I think we still have a long way to go. And I want to learn as much as I can so that next year we do include anyone. If we left anyone out, I really try not to, you know.
yeah,
But
but you know, just going off what you're saying, that's such a great point, Juliet, of like that space that you don't quite fit into.
yeah,
That space is sort of what we're trying to create, actually,
yeah,
so that all those people that feel like they don't quite fit into that space,
mm-hmm.
um, as best as we can, you know, and we're, you know, just as has been said earlier as well, you know, we still have a lot to learn. That's always going to be the case. You know, we can always get better. We can always,
Mm-hmm.
you know, learn more about representation and misrepresentation in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, communities where, um, you know, creators have visible and invisible disabilities, and how we come to interact with that, and checking our own, you know, narrative about what it means to be able to do and to not do something.
Right.
Right. And so I think that, yeah, just there was just so beautifully how you put that, you know, that space that you know, that space is everything.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we can kind of collaborate on that space, and you know, share that space where we don't really feel like, you know,
Yeah.
um,
And we're all still learning. Even as someone with a disability, we don't we're still learning. Like I feel like Gabe was learning so much about us. I was learning so much about Gabe and Steve. We're all learning about what, you know, because we're not a monolith. It's not just across the board disability. That, you know, little picture of, you know, a symbol of a wheelchair is not everyone. Yet it they try to just put us all in that box, and we all have, you know, very specific needs. So I really wanted to be able to have an open mind and open dialogue to everyone and everything that fits under the sun of, disability. So
You
I
know,
mean, Steve Way, he told us, not too long ago, Doug, we were talking about film festivals, and somebody had said something like, well, when you went to one, he's like, what are you talking about? I've never been to one. I can't go. I can't, it's too much. You know what I mean? I can't do the whole thing and to go and and so he was like, that's another reason this is just so cool, because, being able to go, and to for Steve was, it's just really, it's really powerful.
I've brought this up oftentimes, and because it's something that I'm constantly learning about and exploring. But there's this saying that I've heard often echoed by a lot of people, that accessibility is for everyone. And the reason I love that so much is because I think there's so many different levels to that, in both literal and figurative ways. But the one that's coming up for me today that I'm like going to try to explore a little bit more through the lens of this conversation is that, why do we love film in the first place? Like film, of course we watch stories by ourselves at home on Netflix or whatever all the time, but I think it's storytelling. The real power of it is that shared experience, whether we're literally in a theater together or know that, like, oh my God, like I love this show so much and I know all these other people are, watching it too, and I can talk to my friend about it, or I can like go on some blog and read about other people's perspective on it. It's about the way in which it connects us through the topics that it explores, through the interesting window into worlds we've never seen. And that's such a richer experience, both individually and collectively, when everyone can be a part of it, not just in the experience of it, but in the storytelling side of it. So like, it really does benefit all of us, and in a way that, like, I think sometimes we might lose sight of, because, sometimes we have our blinders on and are just kind of not thinking about people outside of our experience and maybe not considering it in those ways. But like, in that sense, we literally all, each and every one of us, benefit from everyone being able to be a part of it. And that's, to me, what I find so compelling about storytelling and why I wanted to do it in the first place. And I think ultimately, I think it's that, I think of the, it's a really bad analogy. I was about to do the Twilight Zone episode where the guy's the last person on Earth and has all the books in his glasses.
Such a good one.
So it's actually not really that apt. Because actually reading is a very isolating experience. But with storytelling is very different. It's something that, like, it's so much better when it's shared, and that's so much a part of why it's like lights us up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, that there's something about, the stories we tell each other and the stories we tell ourselves are a way that we can make sense of the world. It's a way that we can build some kind of narrative and how we fall into our own lives, and what it means to experience something together, and to, it's really interesting, right? Because there's something we're experiencing this together, and we're all in separate rooms, and it's just sort of the irony of everything, is it lost on us, of this, a friend of mine last night was actually talking about your film, Feeling Through, Doug, and she's like, how would they have told? She's like, no, you have to, figure out a way, because I'm not going to give any spoiler, but you have to figure out a way to communicate, in the best way that you can, and sometimes doing that can change the trajectory of a life, right? As your film so boldly shows us.
Yeah, and filmmaking is all about making the impossible possible. There's always these great stories about behind the scenes of how they got this shot or how they created this one scene. And I don't know any filmmaker that would look at the opportunity to have a differently abled person and not see that obstacle as an opportunity to create something, create this creative magic.
I mean, I totally second that, Julia, and I think so much about it is the challenges, obstacles, things to figure out, whatever way you want to label them, that make stories special. Because that's like ultimately like what is a story reflecting, but some sort of not just a reflection of life, but some challenge or obstacle to move through that is the vessel to derive lessons and wisdoms from. So like when that's always going to be part of the experience of making it as well. So why shy away from it? Why not embrace it and have it be something that serves the ultimate thing that you're putting out in the world? That is, because like what just from the actual finished product, what story is going to be good that doesn't deal with massive challenges and obstacles and things to figure out and work your way through? That is what makes it a compelling watch. And that is always the process of making a film too. So why, when filmmaking is always hard anyway, why say, well, this kind of difficult or difficulty or obstacle is not one that we want to undertake. We only want to, like, it's no, through the lens of that, anything's hard and difficult about filmmaking. Like if you look at any one part of it, it's all hard.
Great films, and they said, oh, it was easy to make. Like I had no problems. Yeah,
right. Like I've never heard that ever. You know, but you know,
I think there's also something with this, you know, going vulture, you know, this concept of like going virtual and being together but apart and not really the, you know, the human experience and the interaction, you know, like that's always going to be, you know, pretty, you know, pretty special, right? And so sometimes I think also in you know, in the last months, you whether it's technology and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to get these films uploaded, and they're all going to be on this platform and this, you know, there's always these little stories in our days, if we're vigilant enough to really see them, that can sometimes sort of poke fun at, you know, either how serious we're taking something, or like I was doing this this thing with Steve Yu, amazing director, but this week, and we're doing this thing for Unstoppable, and I'm shooting it on the, you know, on the Sony, and we're doing it, and I sit down to send it to him. Internet's too slow. He can't get it. So we're like, well, what do you want to do about that? He's like, you're not going to believe this. It'd be faster if you overnighted it to me. So I go to FedEx and I overnight the SD card. And then when I come back to try one more time to upload it, it says access denied. So then I'm right back to the question of accessibility, right? And all the different ways that we're constantly kind of, you know, experiencing it. But my first thought is, how would I show this in a film?
Yeah.
Right. You start, you know, I think that's also, as filmmakers and as writers and photographers and, you know, all the different things, is that it's always already a story. It's just when we land into it.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's so great about Steve Yu? I think he embodies that openness and acceptance to the challenge, because we had our issues with filming me as well, and he's just so cool as a cucumber. He's like, yeah, you know what? Don't worry about it today. We'll do it tomorrow. I'm gonna mail you this. You're gonna get it, and then call me when you get it. And I'm like, but we only have 2 days. He's like, don't worry about it. I mean, like, he's never been like, well, and like anything that happened. The printer wouldn't work. The lighting didn't work. The sound stopped working on the camera all of a sudden. It was just, it ran the gamut. And he was just so, it almost made you go like, oh my God, is this going to happen? Are we going to be able to get this in time? So even when Taylor told her story about having to enter FedEx, I'm like, it's the Steve Yu way. He's just like,
yeah, because it also echoes the thing that is a word that we talked so much about with the Unstoppable program, and story, you know, and making stories is the, you know, the concept of patience.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's just interesting. That's been a huge anchor of
it. Really, you know, has.
Many times people want to rush in and, you know, get the story and then they leave, but to really sit with a story or with an experience and take the time necessary to find out how people are living. How are people living over there? You know, how how are people dying over there? What you know what I mean? None of that can be done in a fast way.
Mm-hmm.
No.
You know, and I think that goes to, you know, Doug, you spent a lot of time working on, you know, for feeling through when you, I remember you sharing that with me when you got, you know, introduced with the Helen Keller Services. You know, you didn't, you know, get involved with them and then, okay, let me get that from you. And then it became a, you know, year's worth of relationships and building trust and, you know.
Yeah. And then, and again, relating back to our conversation from a little while ago, you know, the whole thing is all the better for that real, genuine collaboration. And it really wouldn't have been possible, or certainly wouldn't be what it is without that. So it's it also, moreover, has really impacted my life in a really meaningful way that, in a really beautiful and deep way, changes the trajectory of my life for, you know, for the rest of my life. And on that note, with like the last couple minutes we have here, I'd love to get like a minute or so from both of you on this, but maybe Taylor, starting with you. And again, you know, the 60-second version, because I'm sure we could do a whole episode about this, but how has this experience, particularly with this year's Slamdance and through the lens of Unstoppable, changed you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, this has been one of this project, and being a part of this has been one of the great honors of my life. I mean, I say that 100%. And it's some of the most important work that I've ever done. You know, my understanding of visible and invisible disabilities, what I thought I knew, changes every day. You know, I'm learning from Juliet all the time. I'm learning from Asha, from Steve, from Chris, from Gabriel, like, you know, and so I think if you're present in your life and you're able to relook at the way that you've been viewing yourself and others, and what it means, you know, when you see someone and the way that they're represented, it has to be, you have to be present and vulnerable to be able to tell the story in the way that I feel like the story wants to be told. So for me, one of the major things that I would say that has changed is you know, Jason Da Silva was, you know, having him sort of as a mentor. Juliet and I worked with him a lot, and Crystal Emery, K.R. Liu, Kristen Lopez, you know, even you know, learning from you, Doug, and your you know, your process. It's, you know, by having these experiences and by changing the way that we view what it means to be able to do something and not be able to do something. I think there's no way to do that without looking at the way that we create stories in our minds about the world we live in, and sort of the biases we have, or the, you know, or that we don't have, and other people that do, and just sort of like, yeah, it's, I mean, I don't even know that if that was like an answer, but it's something that's just kind of, it's ongoing, you know, it's an ongoing change, and as it should be, you know, it's not something that's like fixed, or you change it once and then, you know, it's more, I mean, I'm learning. I mean, I promise you, I learned something today that when I woke up, I didn't know it, just since waking up, you know, and it's just being able to, you know, just show up, I think, and just be a part of this and collaborate, you know, it's instead of about the competition, it's got to be focused on the collaboration. Right.
And on that note, Juliet, I'd love if you could bring us home here with the last minute we have, and whatever you'd like to share about your experience through this, and or, you know, what you're looking forward to, and or anything about Slamdance. The floor is yours.
Slamdance and creating Unstoppable has shown me how fearless I am and how fearless I need to be going forward in all aspects of my life. That asking and speaking up and using your voice, not just for yourself, but for others, ends up just bringing it right back to you. I'm a better filmmaker today because I stopped focusing on me and focused on helping other filmmakers.
That's so beautiful. Such a great way to wrap up today's conversation. And again, thank you so much, Juliet and Taylor, for joining us today. It's truly an honor to connect with you both. It's been such one of the real joys of my festival filmmaker experience in getting to work with the people that make up Slamdance, who are such an amazing team and so willing to collaborate and have that real shared experience. It's been an honor. And Taylor, maybe if you could just tell everyone one more time, where they can check out the festival.
Absolutely. You can you can check out everything, every film, every panel, everything at watch.slamdance.com. You can also check it out. We got Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire Stick. We have some amazing panels as well. So the first Unstoppable panel will be Valentine's Day, and it's with Kristen Lopez of IndieWire, and it's called Real Love to Real Love. And it's epic. I mean, each of these panels is they're amazing. So please come check it out. It's $10. And help be a part of this community and show your support. It's awesome, and I know that the filmmakers are,
you won't leave the same, that's for sure.
Well, I love that. And again, go to slamdance.com. You can get your tickets there. There's no reason not to. It's $10 to amazing content. Thank you again. And looking forward to Slamdance. I know I'll be diving in there shortly as well. So really excited about it. Thank you for all of you who joined us today. We'll be back with another episode next week. And until then, have a wonderful weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Doug.
Bye.
Thank you, Aaron and Jamie and Helen Keller Services. Bye, Juliet.